Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our AI Budget 2026 webinar. I'm Sierra Halstenberg. I am Head of Service Delivery here at Triario. And today we want to help you make confident strategic decisions about where your AI budget should go next year. So, as you know, AI is evolving faster than ever, but not every investment translates into results. So, this session is really about focus, turning AI spending into measurable business outcomes. So, overall, our goal today is to give you a practical framework. So, to help you identify what's worth investing in, what to pause, and how to connect those AI initiatives directly to your growth, efficiency, and ROI. So, I'll set the stage by just going into who we are and what we're covering. And then Josh will walk through the market landscape and the investment strategies that we recommend. So, as I mentioned, I'm Sierra. I lead our service delivery team. I have specialized in digital marketing and operations for over 10 years. For the last 4 years, I've specialized in HubSpot and AI implementation. So, my role here at Triario is just making sure that the AI solutions our clients adopt are scalable, measurable, and really aligned with their business goals. And today I'm joined by Josh, our sales director. He specializes in AI powered sales and revenue strategy. So he really helps organizations use AI to fill and move their pipelines more efficiently. And I will let him introduce himself.
Well, thank you for that great intro there, Sierra. Always do these with you. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. As the title slide shows, Josh Damagala, Sales Director for North America at Triario. I've been in sales for about 8-9 years. With that, about 6 of that in the HubSpot ecosystem, whether that was directly at HubSpot or on the partner side here. So happy to walk you through everything today.
Great. Yeah, so between us two, we'll be covering both sides of the equation, right? So the strategy and the execution. So you'll get a full view of how to make AI a working part of your 2026 operations. So here is what we'll be walking through today. First, we're going to start with current state of the market. So how companies are spending on AI and what is actually working. Then we'll get into what to invest in. So the high impact systems that scale. Then we'll move into kind of having a contrast with that. So what not to invest in. So those traps that could waste budget or stall out in that pilot mode. Next, we'll show an investment decision matrix. So a framework that you can use to evaluate opportunities. And then Josh will show you what we've invested in at Triario. So this will include a live demo of our prospecting agent, our lead qualification agent inside HubSpot. And then we'll wrap up with Q&A. So you'll see we have a chat available here in the webinar. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and we'll be able to answer those at the end of the webinar. And just a quick update, we will be sharing a recording of this webinar with you. So just keep that in mind and look out for that email. And so with all of that, we can go ahead and dive right in. I will hand it over to Josh to set the stage with what's happening in the market right now.
Yeah, thanks, Sierra. And as Sierra had already mentioned a couple of times on this, AI has really been the talk of the town for the last several years here, but it really is a new frontier where there's constant evolution going on in the market. There's all these new tools, processes that are popping up, but how do we actually take AI and get what we need out of it, right? So some of the things that we've seen from independent research is that by 2028, there's expected to be about a 600 billion investment into AI budgets. And yes, that's billion with a B. What we find from like the day to day is roughly 88%. So almost 9 out of 10 marketers are using some form of AI daily. But the question is, are they actually doing it well or in a way that's helping them move everything forward? And then what could potentially be a shocking metric here too is that with all these AI initiatives that are going on, and everybody is putting some sort of thought or effort into making it work for their businesses, only about 25% of those pilots are actually reaching a stage where it's implemented across the organization, where most are actually failing before they get there. And there's a couple reasons for that, and we'll get to some of that in the next couple slides here. But really, the main takeaway here is that businesses are moving away from, hey, let's try everything, throw something at the wall, hope something sticks. But what is actually delivering results for us that's solving problems that we need to double down on and build on from there? So ultimately, to start off here, what are some of the things that we should be investing in? Now, this is going to be conceptual, but then also what we should be doing actionably at the same time. So something that seems maybe like a no-brainer, but it's time saving from an automation standpoint, right? So this could be things that are agents that are qualifying your leads. Do you have, like within HubSpot, the marketing studio creating content for your marketing team? Anything that you can do to show of like, hey, we have talked to X amount of people. Here's the summary over that time frame for a specific sales opportunity, what's happened across the last 3, 6 months, so on and so forth. The next piece of this that's important too is we need solutions that are going to be easily able to integrate into what we're doing today. Part of the reason for this is the real foundation for AI, and especially when we get to like agentic AI, is you need a great data foundation for it to actually work off of, right? Because we've all heard of it. If you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out, and that's not really going to help you get to where you need to be. So part of this is a reason why some of those pilots have been failing, because either it's a tool that's siloed on its own where it might be cool and it's doing something on its own, but it doesn't connect to the larger ecosystem. And that doesn't really provide a ton of value there. Another reason too, and this is like a positive, but then also a negative of why we've seen these pilots fail, is that when you're coming into these projects, somebody might just think that the functionality of it's cool, right? Or conceptually, it might sound good, where it could be a chatbot that has certain functionality, or an AI SDR that's a prototype or experimental that can do all of these things. But the way you really want to structure your AI investments, right, is going to be, what problem are we trying to solve? Why are we trying to solve that? What would success look like? And then how do we measure that across a given period? Usually like a 30 to 90-day trial there with tracking milestones at each. And then lastly, it's the data and the training foundation of everything. So I did touch on the data side already, but the training side is equally as important, right? One thing that we see, because we're a HubSpot shop and we do a ton of HubSpot work, including implementations and integrations, really the most successful ones come from those where we have adoption and appropriate change management, right? So AI tools are no different here. What we want to make sure is that if we are putting these new processes and tools into place, the end users understand what they are, what the new process is, why it matters, and how they can actually use it so that they will actually use it. Because the better adoption, the more value you're going to get out of something. I know I've thrown a lot at you all here so far. Sierra, just curious if you have anything you want to add before I keep going on here.
I think you covered everything.
Perfect. So now that we've talked about the positives, and I did talk a little bit about what not to invest in, but let's reinforce some of these points here too. So mentioning like standalone tools without really any clarity of what the ROI is going to be or the improvements for it. So it's that cool tech, right? It could be that chatbot I was talking about. Going back to that initial metrics where we saw like 25% of those projects or pilots ended up being fully implemented and successful, this is the inverse of that, right? Where 75 never actually reached there. So really what that means for you is that that's a loss of money, time, and resources, right? To where if we're smarter about how we're actually implementing the AI into our processes, we can really have gains all around those three key areas instead of losing all of that and taking a step back or maybe delaying where we're ultimately trying to get to. So once again, this is going to be an inverse of what we saw as point two of what to invest in, but it's things that aren't going to be scalable, right? Because even if we do run a pilot for something that might be siloed on its own and it does end up working, we need to think long term down the line of how is this actually going to plug into the larger ecosystem? Because what we're seeing is that, well, there are a lot of tools that can consolidate. tech stacks are growing because of all the great technology out there. So you always want a source of truth, which should be your CRM for most like sales, marketing data, customer data, all things like that. But then maybe for like financial data that lives somewhere else, how do we streamline that and connect that into HubSpot? Pretty much what we've been talking about here is like big infrastructure purchases before fixing the data fundamentals here. That's what I'm talking about. Of like, if we don't have that clean data and it's garbage in, we're going to get garbage out. We need to make sure we have that foundation right before we actually take advantage of these AI initiatives. Because if we're building a house and that house is built on sand, the AI is just going to collapse with that, and it's ultimately not going to get us to where we need to go. So there is a process here where we need to make sure that what we have today is in a good place to then leverage AI on top of that. And then this goes back to really that methodology I was talking about of what are the actual expectations that we're looking for, right, for these AI tools to do. We know and we've heard it like, oh, it's going to replace this job or this person won't be needed anymore. There is some truth to that to a point, but ultimately, what AI is meant to do is to enable people to be better at their jobs. So, if we're looking for solutions of something that can do everything all at once and replace people without really like proper oversight or measurement of what we're trying to get out of it, really isn't something we should go because it's not realistic. So, just to give you a couple examples here, and we put together a little bit of a decision matrix here. So, there's a few criteria, excuse me, and a couple examples that I'll walk you through here of what could make sense or what could not make sense of why we should do an AI initiative. So the first one that I'm going to talk about here is prospecting, lead qualification, and follow-up agents. This could also be agents that are like a customer agent where they handle incoming inquiries depending on your business model. But essentially, what is the outcome of this is that we want to have revenue growth from these three. Scaling potential is pretty high because with these agents taking on the work for our team can focus on other activities while the agents are doing this up front to tee up those really hot leads or very qualified deals to protect the time of our team. The data and infrastructure, assuming we have good CRM practices so far, this information should be good because it'll be demographic information, right? Like who they are, what their title is, the industry, the company they work for, so that AI can search out that information, tailor messaging to them, and then leverage that on what we solve for as a company. Typically, when we see this start to work, is because this is something you can implement in under 30 days. You can see between 3 to 6 months of deals actually closing on this, depending on what your deal cycle looks like. So, because of all these positives, we would say from a recommendation standpoint, this is something worth investing in as a first step, and you should do it. The next option we would have is like additional customer data integrations. So pulling in non-CRM data into your CRM to be an even fuller source of truth. So what I mean by this, right, is like let's take HubSpot as an example. You might be doing your marketing out of it and you might be doing your sales out of it. But let's say you're in construction, right? So you're doing your project management outside of HubSpot. Your billing, estimating is all outside of HubSpot. That information could be good to bring in because it could help you from a reporting standpoint to understand where things are working, how everything's aligned, maybe where you need to follow up at certain stages. But that isn't a first priority of what we need to do here because we need to make sure that we have that initial CRM data right first and we're putting out the initial touch points. So from a scaling potential standpoint, this could be high, but it would really be between medium or high, depending on if the juice is worth the squeeze, because we can bring the data in. But the real question is, if we do bring the data in, what are we going to do with it? And what's the expected outcome from there? So there'd be a partial infrastructure readiness here because we probably have some of the CRM set up ready, but then we would have to connect those other data sources in, probably change properties, maybe automation paths through workflows, new campaigns, all of these things. From a time frame perspective too, because of the work that goes into this and the different systems that we're using, trial and error, things like that, it's going to be a longer process here. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but this is more of a longer term goal. So for something initially out of the gate, if you don't have something like the agents already set up, we would say hold on this till you have that foundation and then branch into this as a phase two. Now, to get to a third example here, so kind of going back to one of those like cool tools or tech that we might have, It could be something that writes copy, right? So it could be for ads, emails, headlines, CTAs, you name it, but it lives on its own. And if it's really not connected to the ecosystem, what good is it really going to do for us? Because those are, let's say, marketing assets, but if they don't live in our marketing tool or our CRM where our customer data is, and we have the full profile of these people, what's really the benefit here? And then we might be relying on an integration to even bring this information in. So while it might be effective in its own lane, in the broader ecosystem, maybe not so much. So that hurts the scalability standpoint. That goes because it's on its own siloed. The infrastructure isn't really there. We'd have to create that. The time frame, it would probably be quick because it is one tool doing something very specific. But because of these prior things, it's not something we should prioritize at this time and doesn't really tie into the overall theme. With that said, Sierra, and it's all right if you have nothing else to add here, but just want to make sure it is a two-way conversation. Any additional color you'd like to add to all of this, or do you think we're hitting the mark here with everything?
I think everything here looks perfect.
Awesome. Part of that was I just do need to take a sip of water. My mouth was getting a little bit dry there. So, anyways, to bring this full circle, right? We've talked a bit about what does the landscape look like? What should you invest in? What maybe should you not invest in? Well, like what have we actually done at Triario, right? So, something that we've leaned into very heavily, especially in the last couple months, are the agents that are available within HubSpot. So, part of where this came from is just we saw the potential of it. But during HubSpot's big conference back in September, there was a really big push for agents where they were starting to put their own into a marketplace that you can take advantage of. But then partners like us could also build agents and then put those into that marketplace too for prospects, customers to look at and try out as well too. So there's a couple that I'm going to walk you through in a live demo environment here that I think are relevant for what we're talking about. So the first is going to be an AI prospecting agent for webinars like we're here. And possibly some of you are here because of what this prospecting agent actually did. So I'll show you that real one. The company research agent, because it's good to know when we are targeting these companies that maybe are our target accounts or very well into our ICP, we want to make sure we know everything about them to feed the AI, the agents, that as a prompt so they can have very targeted messaging to them. Because we know our inboxes are fuller than ever from people trying to sell us stuff. But what really stands out is maybe hitting on a certain pain point with certain contextual clues at the right time and place, which this can help with. For all our marketers out there, because we have talked about this a little bit so far of just how much it's used on the day to day, I'm going to show you like how we run a campaign for these webinars, but then also the social post agent of how it's going to give us ideas of how we can be expanding our reach onto different channels for things relevant to us, but also our target market. And then, of course, all of this lives in HubSpot and it's seamlessly integrated in. So we're not jumping out of different systems, having that siloed information. And ultimately, oh, whoops. Hold on one second. Sierra, are you able to send me that link really quick?
Okay. Shared.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there or where that went.
Do you need me to share the presentation?
I am good coming back right now.
Okay, great.
Yep. Okay, so business impact standpoint. So from what we saw from implementing these, we put them on a trial period with specific criteria that we were looking for, and it was really to like a 3 to 6 month impact standpoint. So from an ROI perspective, just from using the marketing studio as well as the social agent, what we saw is that from a time to really campaign standpoint of what it took to get these off the ground, it was about 90% quicker than before. So that's one key aspect that we saw. And also what we saw for all three of these things, because really what it's hitting is sales, marketing, and then operations to a degree. There was high scalability potential across the board. So now to actually get into the live demo of what this looks like, I'm going to walk you through a couple of different examples here. So with this said, excuse me, first things first are the prospecting agents. So what you can see here are a couple different profiles that we have for what these agents can do. And I'm going to walk you through, for example, the webinar invitation agent. So what we start as here is the description. What's the name of the agent? What's it actually supposed to do? The identity of it, meaning how is it actually going to come across when it's sending out messages to people. So who we're targeting, whoever's the contact owner within HubSpot, it's going to look like it's coming from that person. And then we have the tone of what we want this to match, right? So maybe team member one has more of a direct style, but team member two has more of a laid back style. We can have the personality and tone match that to really make it seem like it's personalized coming from a real human. So you can also have it be multi-language outreach if necessary, but in this case, not. We just had it in English. And then what we're going to do too is the actual selling information, right? So what we wanted to do for this specific webinar is we attached the landing page URL to this and then filled in this information. So who are we? What do we sell? Why are we actually different than those in the rest of the industry? What can we actually help you solve for? What should it be selling from a products and services standpoint? Who do we work with the most from an industry perspective, and also the target ICP, so the ideal customer profiles at these companies. So when it comes to AI agents, the key is always really in the prompt and then tweaking that over time to make it stronger and better as you go. So these data points are key when you want to be using these agents. And then ultimately at the end of this, we would have what do we want a call to action to actually look like, right? So in this case, it would be we want somebody to click into the webinar landing page and ideally book from there. But if this was more of like a sales prospecting agent, that could be to book a meeting, maybe get them to download a white paper, so on and so forth. And so you can have that here. So what we're looking at here, and I can show you an example of some of what these emails would look like. You can have autonomous, or you can have it be semi-autonomous and send automatically based on people that hit certain criteria. So what we're looking at, right, is that for email one, and this is actual copy of what it would show. So it's pulling the company, it's going to get some context on them, try to make this relevant to the person's role and why they should attend this webinar, right? You can see this is one of Jose's contacts, so it looks like it's coming directly from him. We then have it go through a drip nurture campaign where it's going to go one step at a time over a course of a couple different days, sequencing. And really, this would end when either the emails go through or somebody engaged saying, hey, we're not interested, booked, all of that good stuff. And then what we can do here too is because we don't want these emails to go out at opportune times or weird times, like during the weekend, something like that. So you want to set your guardrails to where maybe people would actually be checking their email to open this, be able to see it. And then what we can do is set the minimum days between emails and then the maximum that we would want to do as well from there. So that's one example. One thing I actually should mention before moving on here. So you can give custom instructions too, which is that further prompt pruning that I was talking about. So how do we actually want this email chain to go? What do we want the tone to be, really reinforcing anything that's important here, and then getting the key points across to make sure this is as tailored as possible. So what this would also look like, and let me just move this out of the way. This is from this actual specific agent where we can look at the gamification of what worked and what did not work in these cases. So what we can see is that from an enrollment standpoint, we had about almost 5,000 actually people that were put into this. We delivered it to about 3,700 of those, and then we can start to see where we're starting to get engagement. So actual open emails, clicked, and then those who converted in one way, whether that was a reply or booking for the webinar. So just for the sake of example here, if I wanted to click into everybody who clicked into the email or one of the links in the email, I have that list directly from the CRM here, right? So I could see it was Jeremy, Miranda, Rudy, Morgan, all of that. Let's say I wanted to hone in on Morgan and actually see a bit more about them. I can see the whole journey that they had went through here, right? And what the actual agent did as well. So they were enrolled into the sequence, which we saw. We can see that there's actual research that was done, which is always the key here, right? We can see what that research actually is. So we see that they looked up who Morgan is, their role, who they're associated to, maybe anything we could use to help, get them interested. And then same thing from the company standpoint. So who they are, really the summary of it, any recent company news that could be helpful, the actual links to that news, what the company is all about from a values perspective, job opportunities they might have, product analysis, so on and so forth. So this can be as granular as you want it to be and cast a wide net if you want it to as well. But the point here is the research wants to build a profile. You want to prompt it in a way to build this profile to actually know these people, to have relevant messaging to reach them at the right time and place, or pique their interest enough to actually get them to want to show up to something like this. So what this could actually look like too, if I wanted to add this research as a note to Morgan, this would then go directly to her contact record, which then I would see here, right? So maybe she didn't end up showing up for this webinar, but maybe Morgan's a pretty good prospect for what Triario could do. From a sales standpoint, I would then have this in that one pane of view, which is the contact record, to use this in my outreach from here too. Or if we go back to the prospecting agents, what we can do is have there be automatic triggers for certain things of why people will be enrolled into certain nurture paths. So, for example, right, I could have it be when a specific page is viewed or a specific form. So, what that would look like is form is submitted as any form. But if I wanted to be specifically my meeting link, maybe it was the landing page for this HubSpot user group meeting, anything like that I can do. And then there would be a personalized email journey that the agent will put them through based on that. You could say I could also put them on a list, or if they hadn't been engaged in a certain amount of time. I can set the parameters and triggers for all these things to really make this a personalized experience. So I will take a quick pause there. Sierra, I haven't been taking a look at chat. Do we have any questions that were in, or do you have anything that you would like to add as well before we keep going here?
I haven't seen any questions coming in, but just a quick reminder, if anyone does have any questions, there is a Q&A tab here in Teams if you want to drop your questions here. If anyone doesn't have any questions, I think we can move into the next demo.
Yep, that works. So part of what I want to talk about here, and I'm going to show you the outcome here, but then the actual structure of this too. So this is the company research agent. And what we're looking at here is the actual prompt and information that it's fed to get the input that it needs so it can get the output that we want, right? So the agent instructions and being as specific as possible to actually find what we want to know, this is where we put that in, right? So the role, who is the agent, be specific here of what they should be looking for, the goals, right? These are the key points that we're going to care about to help for our outreach here. What's the input that we're going to give them, right? So in this case, it's just going to be the company name or the domain so they can go do the research on their own. And then what are the actual actions that it should take once we give it that URL or company name to go look. And then it'll also pull in any existing data we have from the CRM side. And then here's what we're going to get from it, where it'll be like an executive summary, company overview and background, where we can see some demographic information, that recent news we were seeing, products, services, all of that good stuff. So that part of the prompt is pretty important. And then here's the things that we can see that the agent can actually do. So it's going to research the company page, search the web for information, maybe summarize anything we have in the CRM. And then what we can also do is add in knowledge as well. So this could be documents we have within HubSpot. Maybe it's like a value prop for Triario. Really, this is at your fingertips of what you would want to do here. So just running Triario through this agent that I just showed you, this is what comes back. And we can also see that timeline of what actually happened, right? So check the company record, analyze the website, pulled recent news, completed their run after all of that. So you can see we have a pretty full profile on Triario at this point. So it would be, why actually reach out now? What could we actually do for them? Who are they, right? Location, company background, industry, primary services, anything recent that's popped up, industry trend and competitive landscape. So things that they're doing, maybe as opposed to other partners based on what this agent has seen, the customer segments that we're hitting, right? and then as well as anything within our CRM if we have any prior knowledge, interactions, or information on the company. And then what we could also use to maybe spark our outreach is any recent news or trigger events. So why this matters, right, is going back to one, that personal research that maybe sales or marketing teams are doing, where we can plug in a ton of these companies, have these agents find out what are good fits for us. That's going to eliminate a lot of the legwork for sales teams, where then I could just pick this up and run with the highest rated leads that I'm getting from this. Or I could then have to go seek out people within specific ICPs within these companies that are good fits for me to then focus my outreach on as well too. Because for me, when it comes to the day-to-day, whether it's demos, discovery calls, integrations, building scope of works, I don't have time typically to be able to do this or even do prospecting for the most part. So this fills the gap for me. So this is something that doesn't require a ton of setup, and this would be a quick win for a lot of teams to really start to get comfortable with AI, but start to see some advantages and results from it as well too. So the next piece here, and while this is loading in, I wanted to go into the marketing studio. And this is for all our marketers out there. And this is directly tied to that data point we saw of where like 88% of marketers are using AI on some basis every day. So within HubSpot, you have what's called the marketing studio, where you can basically put together campaigns with all AI generated assets. So you can see on the right-hand side in this box here, we have a lot of boxes and rectangles. These are all the assets, but where this actually starts is the prompt, right? So here's the campaign brief of like, what are we actually trying to accomplish with this? So we see we want people to sign up for this webinar. And then who's the audience, who we're reaching, and then additional campaign details. So it's all the similar stuff we've been seeing across like the company research agent, the prospecting agent. It's all about engineering the prompts in the best way that we can. So what this would then look like here is that it puts together all of these assets based on the prompts that we were seeing, right? So we can see that there's some automated emails that are here. We can then see down the way we have some landing pages. There's forms, blog posts. If we wanted to add even more assets, right, we would just click up here and you would see everything we'd be able to do. So there could be social posts. We could add ad campaigns into this. Any marketing channel that exists within HubSpot, that's within our fingertips here to have AI generated content based on that prompt we gave. Now, you might be thinking, is this AI information or content that's coming out like as accurate as it needs to be, or is it super personalized? Is it as good as it needs to be? The beauty of it is a lot of it's going to be good as long as you put out what you need to into the prompts to actually teach it what it needs to do. But where this matters and where our team has seen a lot of gains is the time it saves between putting out all these assets, right? Because sure, you could have some templates for this, but doing the branding, changing the logos, adding in the pictures, colors, creating the different assets across the different channels, that takes a lot of time. So really with the AI tool here within the marketing studio, creating all this for our team, that's giving them that time back to where they can focus on then actually going into the individual assets, seeing what they like, dislike, editing them directly from here, making it as relevant as it needs to be, and really having that legwork done for them so they can focus on something that's harder hitting, which is meeting people at the right time and place with the content through the marketing studio here. Another aspect of this is going to be the social post agent, which we can go into Marketing Studio for, but these are actually what we're seeing here. I did run an agent example before this, which I'll show you in the next tab here of like, what are some social posts Triario should be putting out around this time? So as with anything, and I know I probably sound a little bit like a broken record, but what we want to first do is actually train it, right? So we have some shared settings. It could be across the different social media channels that we're using, who's our audience, is there anything we want to avoid, things like emojis, test how the AI is writing, all of that. So what this would then look like is, and where did this go? Here. So what I did, and all I did was hit the run agent, and it brought me to the social post agent here, where it showed basically what are some things that Triario could be posting from a social standpoint here that might be relevant. So think of this really like a schedule, but also strategizing with you on when to place these things for certain events out of the year, right? So if we're just looking at this first event name here, Black Friday, we all know it's coming up. tells us what Black Friday actually is, largest retail event of the year. But why does this actually matter for Triario, and why should we put out content for it? So right here, it's because it's a prime opportunity to showcase how CRM and marketing solutions can help businesses maximize the sales, manage leads, and their marketing campaign performances during this time of year. Because what's going to happen during Black Friday, there's going to be a huge influx, especially for people in retail or e-commerce, and HubSpot can help with that. So us as Triario, we can put out content for that to get people interested in that. And that's a good, compelling event where maybe they're going to want to learn about that from there. So that's one way that we're using the social post to really reach audiences at very specific times where they're facing compelling events or maybe major pain points for seasonal events that they'll need help with. So the last thing that I do want to show you from the live demo standpoint is, now that we actually saw how do we see what these posts look like from the social standpoint, where do we actually get the information from, what does the back end of it actually look like? So similar to what we saw in the prospecting agent, but as well as the company research agent, is now the social post agent. So once again, we have the box where we have our prompt, where we're really training it on who it is, what we need it to do, what it should be doing, and then also what it can or cannot do, adding in any recommended knowledge. So like our ICP, products and services, brands, all of that. So then when we run this and it has all the right information there, we're going to get an output like this that is relevant directly to our company. And what this is going to do is take the lift off your marketing team, maybe give them some new ideas they weren't thinking of before, but also reaching your target audience at the right time and place through the social tool here. So with that said, I know that was a ton of information. That's everything from the live demo standpoint. From here, there's a
Josh,
couple
we
more.
did have a couple questions come in
Okay.
during the live demo, and I think first, I will announce Jamal's question. And just because this relates to the tools that you just demoed in HubSpot, for a company that uses HubSpot, what is the fastest, easiest AI tool to implement right now? Something that will generate immediate, measurable revenue growth. So I guess a starting point for a company, which tools would be the fastest, easiest one to implement?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what I would recommend is you want to crawl and then walk and then run from there. So let's take this question from, we don't have any AI in place today. What I would recommend is actually starting with something small, where it might be like within HubSpot when you're crafting an email, and HubSpot's AI tool is called Breeze for those who might not know. You can ask Breeze, or through Breeze, create an email response, right? So it would be able to see all the history of maybe a deal record or a contact record, and you could ask it based on all that context to craft a follow-up for you. That would be one. Something else that you can do too is within HubSpot's lead scoring tool, you're going to have a lot of data points already, like if they visited a page on your website, if you've spoken to them before, all of that. You can have the AI within HubSpot then rate those leads based on what you're seeing as like a good criteria, and then it can feed that to the sales or marketing team. So those two are pretty easy and would take within maybe like 30 minutes to an hour to set up. And then an additional one I would add on top of that is, for any active sales opportunities or deals you're working with in HubSpot, you can have AI or the Breeze Intelligence within HubSpot create deal scores based on certain trends that it's seeing. So like, has it been stuck in a certain stage? Has there been a lot of back and forth? Is there a specific messaging that's being said that should raise it, lower it, all of that good stuff? So I think those three, which are the lead scoring, the help with the AI assisted copy for responses, and the automatic deal scoring summaries as well too, would be three good starting points, which those would take under probably an hour, hour and a half to do.
Thanks for that, Josh. We had one more question come in. Rive asked if Since AI is changing so fast, how should we budget for new experimental AI tools next year without risking their core budget? I think I can help answer this question. So, I think the
Mhm.
best way to handle this fast moving AI is to really separate your budget into buckets. So, for example, two buckets, keeping majority like the 85 to 90% focused on tools and initiatives that are proven, right? Like something that will integrate with your CRM that directly ties to your revenue and your operational efficiency, just so you're stable and have a predictable investment zone. And then setting aside that 10 to 15% innovation fund specifically for testing those emerging tools and ideas, which gives you room to experiment without putting your core operations or your budget at risk. Josh, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I mean, you read my mind on that. I think you hit the nail right on the head, and I'm right there with you. I think that's a smart way to do it. And one thing I would just say is we don't fully know where everything's going to go, but to Sierra's point, put most of it in the tried and true where it is going to make sense, and then always be open to what could be out there and put a little bit towards that experimental side. Question why Sierra? Did we have some more or?
Yeah, so sorry, my system, I'm getting notifications and I'm getting delays in the questions coming in. But Juanita asked, what is one type of AI spending you see companies regret the most, and how can we avoid it in our 2026 budget? I am happy to answer that as well.
Sure.
So the biggest regret we see with our clients is we see spending on tools that don't connect to anything else. As Josh was mentioning in the previous slides, it's what we call a standalone tool. So they sound great in theory, right? So a content generator here, a chat bot here, but they live outside your main systems. So that data never loops back into your CRM or your other automation tools. So that means the team would have to manually move that information around. So that just kills the efficiency and the purpose of AI and makes results impossible to measure. So my recommendation is if you want long-term impact, prioritize AI that fits in your existing tech stack. So tools that plug into your CRM and your marketing platform, not that one that's just sits off to the side.
Yeah, and one thing that I would add to that too, to take more of a conceptual route to it, anything that there's no clear path of what you're trying to accomplish. And what I mean by that, right, is going back to what I said at the beginning, right? We want these AI initiatives to follow the structure of what problem are we trying to solve for? Why are we trying to do that? What's the outcomes that we're looking for and the milestones to reach that and how we can measure those, right? So if you can't say you have a really clear plan on that for any AI initiative, it might not be worth doing at this time.
I agree. All right, leave a couple more seconds for questions coming in. I'll keep refreshing my feed. All right, Josh, I think we're okay to move into next steps.
Sure. So next steps, and I will just go back one slide here. So if anything piqued your interest here today, and it's something that you want to hear a bit more about, either from Sierra or myself, you can use this code here on the screen, the QR code, to book a meeting with one of us, where we can talk through maybe what your AI budget should or could look like for the coming year, but also your priorities and maybe what AI functionality would make the most sense for you. Couple examples, right? So it's what we've been talking about, that agentic deployment, training on it, heavy focus on data enrichment, data hygiene, but then also automations through this as well too. So I'll just give a second here for anybody who wants to pull this here. All right. Sounds like question-wise, we are covered. If there are any more, please feel free to put them into the chat now. Once again, we do have this call to action, which you'll receive in an email following this as well too. We know there's a lot of information here, might be a lot of new information too. Sometimes it takes a little while to fully absorb all of it. So take your time with that as well. And then if no other questions here, this was the end. Thank you all for joining us. We hope you found this helpful. And if you do need anything for your AI needs going into the next year or even beyond that, we are always here for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys.